we're talking about urban vehicle access regulations. And of course, when you imagine with the pandemic, that was a big topic for us as well, because cities were starting to get this idea, maybe not all were just starting, but this idea that the space outside our homes, outside our apartments, in the urban areas, we need it for other things than just for moving cars quickly past. We need this space as a place to live. And a lot of cities put in temporary measures, these pop-up measures and pop-up cycle lanes and pop-up outdoor eating space or playing space for children. Suddenly this became something that was crucial for life because we needed to be outdoors to have any sort of interaction with people. And I think this recognition of what space is about and what it should be used for, and maybe more clearly recognizing it can't be used entirely for cars, or there are a lot of other things we can do with it. So, and this is moving or standing cars or vehicles used for logistics. There are so many different vehicles that have sort of taken over our urban space, and we're trying to find ways maybe to take it back now. And of course, some of the traffic is useful. Some will need to be there. We don't question it, but maybe the quantity and the timing of things do need to be called into question. And this is some of the work that we've been doing in ReVeAL with the 6 cities that we're working with, and the partnership that you will be introduced to here throughout the day, today and tomorrow. Before we get to those, though, we do want to give you a bit of an overview, so an understanding of what ReVeAL is. And that challenging task is going to come to my colleagues, Lucy and Sidharta, who will be up here in a moment. And their job will be to try and describe this structure that we've created and the pieces that we've put within this structure and how it all fits together. So this is sort of the basis of what we're doing today. And tomorrow, trying to build the framework or describe the framework that we built, we'll say, and then we're filling in the pieces, filling it with life from the cities, and also giving some examples of the cross-cutting aspects or the processes that need to take place when you're putting in place access regulations. So this is maybe a little bit cryptic right now. I don't want to steal anybody else's words, and they're going to be, I think, coming up again and again. But that's just to give us a little bit of a start right now with where we are. And with that, I think I can hand it over to Sidharta Gautama from the University of Ghent. Sidharta.
Okay. Thank you. So I have the daunting task, Lucy and I actually, not to cram a 3.5-year project, not in 6 hours, but in 10 minutes each. So the most difficult part is the acronym, ReVeAL. I'm reading it: Regulating Vehicle Access for Improved Livability. And I wanted to start with this image of my city, the city of Ghent. In the 80s, you see public space being dominated by car. The city has a big parking space with roads for vehicle traffic going in and out of the city. And the city today, the same spot, a totally different view. Public space has opened up. It's a place for people to meet, people to relax and enjoy. And cities of Ghent are not alone, of course. Worldwide, cities are facing the same challenges. They are all asking the questions, how can I keep my city accessible? How can I keep my city healthy, an attractive place to live? And there are many sides of answers to this question. This is an example of the city of Ghent, but there are many more ways to deal with this question. And even for the city of Ghent, the story doesn't end here, because the city is more than an Instagram picture. There's a lot of other things going on outside of this image. And this is the issue that we want to address. So in ReVeAL, we are actually looking at urban access, vehicle access regulation, to bring this to the standard repertoire, to come to sustainable mobility transitions. And for this, we were very lucky that we had 6 cities who took up the challenge. We had 6 cities who each chosen a certain strategy to develop and implement for their cities to regulate vehicle access, but more importantly, to improve aspects of city life. And they were supported by 6 organizations. And you see the logos of those organizations in the bottom, who supported the cities. They had the knowledge on different aspects of UVAR. And not only within the project, but then this knowledge was being captured in order that it came to guidance and a support tool for other cities also to be used to go towards their implementation. Now, you already heard me mention the term UVAR. It's Urban Vehicle Access Regulations. And these are measures to regulate the access of vehicles to your urban infrastructure. But what are these measures? The most known examples are emission zones. We are here in London with a low emission zone, ultra low emission zone, even zero emission zone. Other examples are the limited traffic zones, like the image which you see here from the city of Padua and other Italian cities who adopt the same methodology. But other examples also exist. And we have examples like Superblock in Vitoria-Gasteiz, parklets and even school streets, which are more local interventions on a smaller scale, spatial interventions that also help to support to come to the same goal. Now, when would you like to use these UVARs? You would do it when carrots are not enough. So it's often not enough just to show the way. There need to be, because it's such a complex question, there need to be some more strong measures put into place, but they need to be balanced. It's a mix of carrots and sticks which are being offered, and they help you to reduce urban traffic and congestions, reduce emissions. But at the same time, they also can increase the level of safety and free up your urban space. And it can even help you to improve fairness and equity to your system. Now, this is all quickly said. You see these nice pictures of cities doing things. And on the left, you see the image of Europe from the CLARS website, so urbanaccessregulations.eu, where you see 700 of these different initiatives all over Europe. But there's a lot of things going on underneath such a dot. It's not just one implementation. There are a lot of different pieces to the puzzle that needs to be brought together. And this is basically what ReVeAL is for. And we try to break up this puzzle in order to understand what is happening and how did it come about it. Why is this so difficult? This is the example of the city of Ghent again, where we implemented the UVAR, which is called circulation plan. And it's a plan where around the pedestrian zone, the city was being cut up in different sectors to avoid through traffic through the city. So you were allowed to enter one sector, but you were not allowed to travel from one sector to the other. You had to go through your ring road again. It was a very good implementation. It opened up the city for pedestrians. It allowed us to reduce traffic. But if you look into the details, you actually see that there are 9 building blocks under what we call a circulation plan. You have the main building blocks, which are the recirculation and adding roadblocks as a traffic filter. But next to this, we also have the element of speed reduction in the city center, cycle lanes which have been implemented, permits for travel. So you see that if you want to adopt a circulation plan, like for instance here you see an article in The Guardian where the city of Birmingham was very interested in this concept from the city of Ghent, then the city of Birmingham needs to understand what are all the elements that need to have been put into place to call it a circulation plan. So it's all about this underlying detail, which is equally important to understand and to come to success. It's also, oh, sorry. So what ReVeAL then actually did is made this categorization of my solutions. If you call something a low emission zone, or if you call something a circulation plan or super block, what are the underlying building blocks of which such a strategy is being built? And we have identified 33 of these building blocks, and we have categorized them in what we call measure fields. So 3 main categories of building blocks: spatial interventions, pricing aspects, and regulatory measures. And Lucy will go into more detail in explaining them, lucky me. But apart from the solution, it's not only about the specific solution, it's also about, oh, sorry. Again, each measure field had a responsible organization. You see them here appear in the screen. But apart from the solution, it's also about the process. It's not something which is put into the city in one big aspect. Here you see, again, for the circulation plan for the city of Ghent, there were 40 supporting events happening on this transition path towards final implementation. And this is equally important to understand. It's not only that you're interested in the circulation plan, you also need to know what is this path to come towards this, this goal. And this is what we describe in the cross-cutting teams. We have 4 cross-cutting teams identified, and our complementary measures: user needs, governance and finance, and ensuring compliance. And they allow you to make an UVAR development process, so that apart from the solution, you are able to coordinate the changes that are necessary to come to these specific solutions. You will hear more details, and it will be more explained tomorrow. But again, for each of these teams, we have a responsible organization that led that team. And then the most important aspect is inspiring cities. Like I said, we were very fortunate to have these pilot cities who took up this challenge and who were inspiring for us as a project. The other way around, we were able to inspire the cities to think a bit outside the box, because this is the whole aim of breaking up the puzzle, is that there are different alternatives which are possible. So aside from the main strategy of interest, it's also good to know what are other alternatives, or what are other ways, or how do you need to complement the strategy in order to bring this to success. And we had this quote from Raffaella from Padova, who said, "It was beautiful, people from different departments sitting together and working together on the LTZ." And this is basically the whole aim, I think, or one of the key messages from ReVeAL. Apart from the full methodology and guidance which has been put, I think if you are able to inspire cities to come and take up this challenge of implementing UVAR, I think then we might talk about a real success. So this was my teaser trailer, and I hope we will be coming to a city soon in your neighborhood. And I think I leave the floor now for Lucy to talk about more of the details underneath this.
Wrong way. Right, if I talk too fast, Bonnie, can you wave? Regulating vehicle access for improved livability, a deeper dive than Sidharta's given a fantastic introduction. We have the building blocks. Each UVAR is not just a scheme, you can break it down. If you can break it down in one place, you can rebuild that up in a different place slightly differently. We've got 3 measure fields. One is regulatory, bans, basically the nasty people. The spatial interventions is alternative ways of using that space, and pricing aspects. Each measure field is in categories, and each category into separate building blocks. No? Regulation, right, regulatory measures. These are bans or conditions on certain behaviour. So you're regulated by emissions, 0 or Euro standard. Regulation by type of vehicle, light duty, heavy duty, all vehicle, cars, vans. Or dimensions. And you can see in low emission zone might be emissions, different emission standards for different vehicle types. Regulation by trip purpose, delivery. You might have a scheme that's focused on delivery vehicles on different times and different requirements. They might have to be electric, they might have to be other things, or it might be delivery vehicles are exempted from the pedestrian area and able to go in at certain times. You might have a through traffic affecting all vehicles. Regulation by permit to travel, like a traffic limited traffic zone, a parking permit, or a permit to plan, for example, to build car space, to use machinery, or to requiring to pay for public transport. Sorry, this is an old version of my slides, that's why I'm stuttering a little bit. Then you've got spatial interventions. Physical changes to take place, physical changes to the road space to take space from the motorised vehicle and give it to sustainable modes or other activities. So you might have reducing the speed, changing the road layout to require a vehicle to go slowly, recirculating, stopping a barrier to stop people going in, a one-way street to stop people going in, or taking the road space away so there's less space for vehicles. Reallocating parking space. Something like 96% of the time vehicles are parked somewhere in an urban area. And when you think about especially London or Jerusalem, how expensive land is, and we're giving it away for private vehicles, you could build a lot of flats for that space, or a lot of space to be outside. Like we've realised, being outside is actually quite nice. And since the pollution is being reduced in these cities, it makes it less unpleasant to be outside. So park it. So instead of a car parking space, I'm not going to press the button because something horrible is going to happen. But when you see the pictures on there, you've got Bielefeld cycle street. And on the right-hand side, it used to be a car parking space, and now it's a space to sit and chat. You might have gastronomy or other things. You don't have enough space for a micro-logistics zone, or then you could take a car parking space and make it a community hub. It's not easy. It can be political. And I love the quote from Jean Carlos in Vitoria-Gasteiz. How did you take all those car parking spaces away? We spent a year in stakeholder dialogue and it paid off. So relocating the road space for pedestrians, you've banned all vehicles and then you make the road surface nice for pedestrians, or you shared space. It works for some countries, cities, others it doesn't. From Jerusalem, Thomas said, what kind of universe does shared space work in? It doesn't work in Jerusalem, it might not make, but some places it does. Reallocating roads for cycling or for public transport. And if you take the vehicles away with the limited traffic zone, you can then give the carrot back as a nice amenity space or faster public transport or safer cycling. Pricing aspects related to access. It's not just the congestion charges, because we've got a few of those and they're difficult. You have to be a very brave mayor to do that, and you need to have a very serious problem. But it's the permit charge, charging for the permit. It might be emissions related. It might be a fine if you transgress. It might be parking charge, dynamic fixed price, reducing off-street pricing, increasing on-street pricing. All these information are given in fact sheets, which are available on the website as of this morning, Alessia. Yes. So they're now, we have gone live and fact sheets with information on them and linking which building blocks work with each other. So this is the example from Victoria Gasteiz. They use a lot of spatial interventions together with some regulation, some traffic limited zones, Euro standards, low emission zones, parking charges, all going together with complementary measures, which I'll talk about in a minute, to make sure that it's not just one magic wand, it's a lot of different things built into the sump as well. Cross-cutting themes. Sorry, complementary measures are the first of the complementary cross-cutting themes, and these are about making sure that the area is accessible to people and goods, even if it isn't their first mode of choice. The other thing it's about is making sure that you're not disadvantaging people you don't mean to. That doesn't mean everybody's allowed to get in, taking the road space from vehicles, and maybe from commuters and giving them to people who need to vehicles like those are disabled. So ensure additional provision of public transport, cargo bikes, don't forget freight, at least at the time of the UVARs implementation. Financial or in-kind incentives, grants towards sustainable mobility, vouchers for mobility passes or micro-mobility. So it's not just giving them money, it's saying that's what you want from them. And it's maybe if you've got permits, you're taking permits away, giving them compensation for that, or to help them reduce the emissions to their vehicle. Most regulatory schemes have some sort of exemption for emergency vehicles, people with disabilities. The more exemptions, the less scheme you have. So these have to be carefully done as needed. And organisational support, pilot projects, alternative time periods, like the London did for the congestion charge. Then you've got governance, the decision-making context. Have you got an open piece of paper, you don't know what you want to do with this area? Or have you got a specific study and a particular idea? Have you got a champion? What legal framework? There's some particular EU laws you need to look about, as well as financing, making sure there's sufficient resources, how you will outsource, and ring fencing income. UVARs very rarely make money, and if they do, any income should be put ring fenced if that's legally possible. It's not always, but it should be national government to sustainable mobility measures. It makes it more popular, it makes it more transparent, and you charge the polluter pays principle. You charge those that drive in and give the benefit of those that are doing the good behaviour, cycling or walking or public transport. And cycle is the famous photo, it's from Munster. How much space if everybody is one person in a car or cycling or walking or in a bus? It's about fairness and equity. Why penalise those that are doing the sustainable thing and give free rein to those who are not doing the sustainable thing? User needs. It's important with an UVAR to make sure you've got user needs. And how do you find that out? Some things you will know from your experience in the city. The other thing is very much stakeholder involvement. Whether it's within your authority, with the IT, with the marketing, with the legal, with the transport, with the environment teams, or whether it's with the different layers of government, national, neighbouring authorities, or whether it's with the stakeholders and the members of the public. Their user needs to get access rather than their desire necessarily to have an exemption, me too, or to drive in. Listening to all and reaching all people, not only the usual suspects. There's a wonderful thing that's linked to in our guidance on arrogance of space. Public assessment is dependent on how you communicate it. Wonderful quote from Samantha: don't underestimate the power of communication amongst you communication right and things happen. Tackling your own problem. Jerusalem had to remind people they were breathing bad air before they could do a low emission zone. Meeting the using these complementary measures, and the rest Julie will tell you tomorrow. Ensuring compliance. There are two aspects of this. One is making sure people are aware of the scheme. They can't comply with the scheme they don't know about. And then if they don't comply, you need to be able to get them with a fine or making sure the road layout makes sure they has no choice. So we look at enforcement options, pros, cons, permit mechanisms, communication, including road signs, digitizing so it gets into your Google app, communicating the aim, how to do that. Is the road closed for traffic or is it open for people? Selling in the advantages. Here's the guidance, got a whole load of stuff in there. It reads well because bodies made wonderful language, so have a look at that. It's referenced, the fact sheets reference to right place in the guidance, all singing and dancing, wonderful. We often need to combine, so you've got a pedestrian zone, reallocating road space, a low emission zone, regulated emission standards, different vehicles with exemptions and grants. Regulation by permits, and really allocating road space, giving the carrot within the UVAR. So the fact sheets, regulator guidance, and then the decision toolbox, which Bonnie and Sophia will talk about tomorrow. How do you choose them? You've got the diagram as idea, you have lots of ideas, and the ReVeAL toolkit can help give you different new ideas and which ideas are best for your city. Then you have a decision, these are the ones you want to focus on, the combination of building blocks put together to make a package, and then implement the favorite one. So first identifying the problem. You think, well, I know what the problem is, but is it through traffic? Is it commuters? Is it light duty? Is it heavy duty? Same as selecting scheme goal. What's the goal? Well, the UVAR will do so many things, but communication is often good having one goal that's important for people, saying at the same time it will help the other goals. Working together, co-creation of workshops with different levels, city, authority within the city, different authorities within workshops. It might be a blank piece of paper like Bielefeld had, or you might have a LED study and a clear idea like Jerusalem had. The ReVeAL toolkit can help give you solutions for your city. It gives you the real project we did for 3.5 years for 6 cities. It's helping this ReVeAL kit in your pocket for you at home to take away with you. Evaluation, you need to let screening evaluation, and then more detail, and then redoing the loop, and then implementing it. UVAR is not a fit and forget. Once you operate, you need to monitor and review, and then we review, go back and see what the problems now are. We hope this makes a taster. We hope to be able to support you after November. If you're interested, contact the email address there or through the website, and look forward to the next 2 days. Right.
Yeah, Lucy's gonna go away, and I'm saying, Sidharta, if you want to come back too, don't leave me up here. That was a wild race through sort of the structure of ReVeAL. And as I said, we'll have more of this tomorrow. The one thing that I would like to say, that's been really great about this project is how it's evolved and developed. So we started with some pretty good ideas about how things were going to be. And we were pretty close with that, but sometimes we're a little bit off. And we thought, we need to add this, or we didn't think about that component.
We should change that.
We need to change that.
Bonnie went, oh dear, this is going to be a hell of a load of work.
But we have to do it. Because we had, for example, a complementary measure that was called enforcement. And we had a lot of long discussions about that and said, it's not really just about enforcement, it's about making sure that people can comply. So we had to rename that, and so it's ensuring compliance. And that means first communicating so that people know, and only in the end, when they don't comply, then you need to worry about the enforcement part. So it was this sort of more, I guess, detailed thinking about what the processes are that we've been working through. And I just wanted to say, sort of seeing this described, that it's important to know that this is a development process. It has been for our project, and it will be for any city that's working on this. We've got a couple of minutes for questions if anybody would like to ask any. And I think I didn't say it before, but we're welcoming questions from online as well. We're taking those in and incorporating those. Is there anything in the room so far? Most of the people in the room, or many of the people in the room, I can say, are very well informed. So Samantha, do you have a question?
I'd still like to ask a question, because this is the second European project I've worked on, and I think
Tap it.
Sorry, we're just doing a little microphone check here while we.
I think
You're probably close enough to be heard, I think, from that.
Yeah, this is the second European project I've worked on, and I think the problems are common, but I'm always interested in how you can draw up a framework, given that we all have to work in a very legally controlled environment. When you're looking across the different cities, because you have that perspective of stepping back, do you really see enough common ground that you can produce guidance that supports us all?
Yeah, because partly if there's a will, there's a way, and there's different mechanisms. For example, Oslo wants to do a zero emission zone. It doesn't have the legal ability to ban combustion vehicles. So I said, okay, let's take the road space away. So it's looking at what your legal framework is and how you can work with that. When we would, I used to work there in London, and when we were doing the low emission zone, if we were to do a traffic regulation order, which would be the obvious way, you had to get all 33 boroughs to talk with each other, agree with the mayor who's of a different political party than any of them. So that you said, okay, let's use the congestion charging mechanism to, if you're free if you comply, and you have a high daily fee if you don't comply. So you can pay your way out if you just want to go in once a year. So you don't ban, and it works. So it's working with the tools you've got. And what we say is, look at your framework, look at this. What we don't give is a hard and fast, this is what you do 1, 2, 3. The toolkit is very much like, here's an idea, think about it. The toolkit gives you ideas of building blocks. When you say, actually, no, that doesn't work, you can go and redo the tool and say, okay, or look at the long list. We started off with a very fixed transition framework, and we realized cities are messy. That's using your words, isn't it? It doesn't always work like that, and you've got to choose. You choose the weapons you have, choose what you do have, and make it work. If there's a will, there's usually a way, and the will with the stakeholders is the political will and the backlash. That's the kind of that's the real challenge, and what we wanted to try to give people as much tools to be equipped for that.
Any other questions? I think I would like to go back to the beginning of the project, Sidharta, and ask you, because you at the University of Ghent were responsible for identifying these 33 building blocks that we have.
Yeah.
How did that work?
I think that's the beauty of this project. It doesn't start from one organization. It needs the minds of many people. I think that this is what has been good from the start, that there were different experts we set about, and at the same time you had the cities who were like our challengers. You could say whatever, but it needs to be understandable. I think that the important thing of the building blocks is not only that these are good categories, because it could be 40 building blocks, or it could be 20 building blocks, but you need to be able to communicate them. So part of the beauty of the building blocks is these UVARs, they are actually complex. I was actually quite surprised to see if you look underneath it, so,
yeah.
I don't know what to tackle this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So it makes it understandable, and it makes it you and the building blocks is defined in such a way that not only the city understands it, but the citizens are also able to grasp what's going on. And I think that was actually the good iterations that we have, because we came from different sizes of building blocks. So I think that's the good iteration we have in this project.
And at the beginning, I was responsible for the regulatory thing. In the beginning, I said, well, building blocks, it's okay for your spatial game, but it doesn't really work. And it really, actually, I really get it now. And it really does work. You have the Euro standards, you have the vehicle, you pick a match. And even a low emission zone is fairly traditional. You're having aspects of all three regulatory measures, plus complementary measures, putting that jigsaw together, that Lego brick together. It's, and limited traffic zone. Well, I'll say now, once I want to say it, is if you're starting with a zero emission zone, you go to a limited traffic zone, small one, expand it, and you don't start with the low emission zone. It's, not from now, not from where you are now. Low emission zones don't reduce traffic. But you start from a low emission traffic zone and move out. London started off saying, we weren't going to do a zero emission zone. And actually they went through this process. Actually, we don't. We want to get the cars out because we've got millions of people coming in per day by foot. We actually want to get more space for people. And it's being careful of what's your aim. And all cities should have amongst their aim carbon, climate neutral, getting the vehicles out. Because if you replace them all with engines, you've only reduced one of the problems, not all the other problems with transport. So London was like, that's what we're going to do. And then this process of thinking about it again, saying, actually, that's not what we want to do. Limited traffic zone or pedestrian zones. And that makes more sense to have a limited traffic zone. Only the vehicles that have to get in should be zero. So the first thing is get people onto the bikes. And COVID's been wonderful for that. It's been horrible for everything else, but it has got people onto bicycles, onto micromobility. If you come to London, it's changed in many other cities. They've changed. There's a lot more people out there, a lot more space, and allowing a lot more space. It's a virtuous circle. The more people cycle, the more space they have, the fewer cars there are.
Yeah.
Virtuous circle.
Yeah, but it's interesting, this process, this thinking, you want to reduce emissions. And then, of course, you come to electric cars and you say, well, we have zero emissions in our zone, but we still have too many cars here. So what's the problem that you solved? Or you solved one of the problems, but you've got 6 others that you haven't addressed it all through this. And so this is why this packages of measures that we keep coming back to.
And livability, you're not taking space away, you're giving it to more people. More people, you can get more people in a space on a tube, on a tram, on a bus, on foot than you can in the cars. And cities are getting more populous, more people, and regulation for none means regulation for everybody to sit in a car behind the next traffic jam.
Also for the building blocks, I think it opens up the scope solutions that you have available, which goes beyond restriction, but also open up to like spatial interventions, opening up space for other use, and it makes the term UVAR a bit more aimed not only to regulating access, but also to opening up your city and making a livable space. And I think this is also the importance of this project.
I think this package idea that comes up again and again.
Complementary measures. You don't just put the ban in. You give people a way, because you've got to get people in and goods in. Give them a way to get in, not just be the nasty stick with a nice. The Germans say whip and sugar bread. I like carrot and stick. I think it is slightly less painful.
Yeah. With that, I think we need to move on. We could keep going, but we won't. So I'll let the two of you go.
Yeah, so I've been asked to say a couple of words of how the EU is looking at access regulations. Need to go down. Yeah, so we always say that ReVeAL was the first project since long that looked at access regulations, and it's a little lie actually. There was another project called Create, which has looked also at this topic amongst other issues. And they came up with this development cycle of cities, of progress made on how cities try to manage vehicle access, looking first at movement, then at people movement, vehicle movement, and people movement, and then evolving into cities who are planning for city life for health, for climate. And I think what we wanted to express in ReVeAL was that we want to move into the stage 3. We want to move into cities that look at placemaking, that are enabling the 15-minute city, that also talk about the placemaking, the destination that becomes more important than the traffic flow, and that we want to move out of this management of vehicles and moving into the design and creation of livable spaces. And that also makes that we have to look at all kinds of other issues related to vehicle access, like weights and dimensions, rather than this initial focus we had 5-10 years ago on emission zones and on drivetrains of vehicles. And that we try also with access regulations to prepare for avoiding the arrival of monstrous machines like the Cybertruck we see here on the slide. So my presentation, which I'm now already quite far in the time, Bonnie, I'm aware. The question I asked myself was, how is the EU helping us to enable the kind of new UVARs we have been discussing, looking at placemaking next to looking at environmental qualities. It's a very EU policy oriented talk, but I think for the UK participants, it's interesting to understand that if you would plan for this at a national level, you have to also think about all these issues that the EU is looking at to enable access regulations. And it's quite a lot actually, that's quite a lot in terms of legislative initiative that surrounds the topic of access regulations. Starting point is the building blocks, or some of the building blocks that ReVeAL has developed. And I will go one by one through them to see what how the EU is contributing. If you look at spatial interventions, there's a big no. The EU is not doing a lot. This is really a subsidiarity issue. It's an issue where the local level, regional level has the role, the biggest lead and the role to play. If we look at pricing measures, there is quite a lot on the European legislative plate. There's I'm not going to describe all the legislation, but basically there are systems in place to organize tolling. Cities are exempt from that legislation, but there's a long-standing discussion in Europe on the internalization of external costs of transport. It's a bit the Loch Ness monster of transport policy in Europe. It reappears now and then whenever a study is completed. But the Commission and the EU is looking at basic principles of how you can bring the real cost of transport to the driver. So that's a bit of a complex issue, not a big way forward there at the EU level. When we look at regulatory measures, there's a lot happening. We have a lot of legislation that points towards the greening of vehicles, but also at the moment, a package is under development to strengthen the air quality norms that cities have to comply to, also with new pollutants arriving on the table, microplastics, etc., which is interesting also when we talk about electric vehicle access to cities. In the EU, we work towards a phase out of sales of internal combustion engines, and there's a lot more happening. Problem there is this guy, Commissioner Breton, who in the recent weeks has first said that it might be good that European car manufacturers keep manufacturing internal combustion engines, proposed cars, so even if not for European use, for export, which then also, of course, keeps the door open to still, for certain exemptions, keep them in use for the continent, maybe. And secondly, he has also launched a Euro 7 package. So what it's about vehicle legislation beyond the current Euro 6 norms. That is not so positive as we had expected. Basically, there will be the combustion engine vehicles that will be produced are not likely to be much cleaner. So that keeps us also in this low emission zone logic where actually we want to move out of, because we hope that fleets are cleaning up by better manufacturing. But overall, let's say it's positive, it's moving ahead in that field. Complementary measures, I would like to highlight a technology aspect of the Euro 7 legislation, where geofencing and the hybrid switch, so the move from internal combustion propulsion to electric propulsion inside certain zones, geofenced zones, would be part of the technologies proposed in that legislation. So that's quite an ambitious trajectory that the Commission is laying out. So geofencing, part of EU legislation. So important overall framework is that the Commission is looking at strengthening of sustainable urban mobility plans, including also access regulations as an important chapter in such a plan. 424 cities in Europe will be obliged to have such a plan. Looking at the functional urban area, so zoning in from the macro level accessibility to the city central access regulations, as also described in the EU project, Interreg project Annexability, where we specifically have designed text, written text to describe a planning process for access regulations, starting at a metropolitan or city regional level, zooming into the city center. Almost done. Just to say that with regards to ensuring compliance, a lot is happening as well. So basically looking at two aspects, access to UVAR information, and Lucy will talk about that, but also access to vehicle or driver information. So basically understanding which vehicle with which characteristics has the right to enter a certain zone. For that, there are two EU legislative options. I will not go into too much detail, but basically it's difficult to choose what would be the best option. There is an exchange of vehicle data between governments possible through the cross-border enforcement directive. So in that case, city A would be able, in the Netherlands, would be able to understand what the vehicle characteristics are, or the driver's name and address or vehicle owner's name and address from a driver in Bulgaria. The electronic tolling system solution would be that all costs related to access regulations, fines or fees are added to a single bill, a unique integrated bill that come with an account based on the vehicle license plate. So summarizing this, what is the EU not doing? We are no longer discussing why we need access regulations, whether it can be implemented or not, how the access regulations are designed. But the EU is trying to legislate technology pathways to enable UVAR deployment and compliance. There's bigger picture legislation to support the green transition, all the vehicle legislation, for instance, and also the idea that the governance is supported by the national level, and this governance aspect becomes quite important. And for that, the Commission has established an expert group on urban mobility that also will include a subgroup on access regulations, with the tasking for that subgroup here on the slide. And we can be proud, we are actually on the list. So we are referenced here in the context of that expert group of the comitology looking at access regulations in the coming years. So that was in brief what the Commission is what's happening at the EU level. An important element is the ensuring compliance, and for that I turn to Lucy, who has a nice overview of what the Commission is doing in view of access to UVAR information.
Right, going back again, like yesterday, an overview and then I get into more detail. What I also see on the European level is, until recently, the Commission has been very much on the fence with UVARs. The lobbyists, the vehicle manufacturers have been saying we need to harmonise. Now it's very much more positive about UVARs. They are needed for the climate neutrality. You can't get climate neutrality in cities without UVARs. It's very much more positive than it has been. They're not, the things they're not doing is things they, in my opinion, possibly shouldn't be doing, shouldn't argue about whether they're needed, but helping where they can, and some places only they can do. I'm doing two sister projects, UVAR Box and UVAR Exchange. UVAR Box is about machine readable format. I think, oh, that sounds really dull. It's not policy, it's really dull. But actually, it's really important. Why? Because let's face it, most of us, when we're traveling somewhere we don't know, use our navigation devices, Google whatever, sat nav. And remember back to yesterday, ensuring compliance, you can only comply with what you know about. If you don't know about it and you're relying on your navi, oh my God, I've got a fine, or I shouldn't have done this, or when I'm planning my trip, I should have chosen another vehicle, I shouldn't have used my whatever. So the navigation device has to tell them about UVARs. And how to do that? And this needs cities to act. And the EU project UVAR Box is making this easier. It's got three aims. One is user-friendly tool to help UVAR authorities to put the machine-to-machine readable data in readable format. A bit more data. Next slide, we'll go into more detail. It's actually creating that machine-to-machine readable for 5 member states in Europe on LEZs. Why those 5? Because that's where 80% of the UVARs in Europe currently are. And this is regulatory UVARs, so it's limited traffic zones, LEZs, and congestion charges. We're also looking at parking zones, pedestrian zones, and emergency schemes. And also, the project's also looking about how to get cities to digitise their UVARs. And part of that is letting cities know why it's so important. Some guidance, benefits, EU law that's coming. And the tool is available here. If you're doing it, if you've got an UVAR, please go to this website and use the tool. So how does it work? Machine-to-machine readable format is horrid. It's not data, it's nasty, it's technical, it's complicated. So UVAR Box makes a fairly user-friendly tool so that you can either import your shape file or type it in the rules to your LEZ. So you've got, does this, no, it's not. So on the left, you've got your traffic regulation order, your ordinance, and you will hopefully put it into user-friendly website to communicate it, and all the other kind of communications that we'll talk about later and that you all know. And then you put it into this data export format, and you'll type it in or import and type it into UVAR Box, and you'll put this on your national access point. Every member state has a single point of traffic machine-to-machine readable data. You'll put it into your city portal, your national open data portal, and from there, the navigation providers, anybody can go and put it into their apps. So you'll see here, this is On de Weg's apps from ANWB in the Netherlands. And you can see, you're saying what the low emission zone is, and watch out, you cannot access it. So why should I digitize my data? Cities, it's in your own best interest. Greater awareness means greater compliance, which means greater impact from your UVAR. Greater awareness is less enforcement work, fewer complaints and fewer queries. Also is UVAR providers such as Google are going around to all the local authorities and saying, can we have your data? So you have to provide the data. And if you provide it to Google in their format, you have to provide it to other people in their format, due to the Open Data Directive. So if you provide it with UVAR box in a single EU-wide datex format, you provide the data once, and it's done. Also, there is a regulation called the Single Digital Gateway, which is a website where you can type, oh, I'm moving from Bulgaria to Sweden, what do I have to do? And in that, national road rules and emission stickers and UVARs are required to be in there by the end of 2023, not very long away. Oh my God, it's got another format. The good thing is the datex2 format can be easily imported, converted into the Single Digital Gateway format. So again, this one format resolves all. There are a number of regulations. Eva mentioned the ITS directive, and the delegated regulation requires member states to digitize UVARs and encourage cities to do so. So you've got data to put it onto the national access point, and there is regulations are under revision in a likely, possibly to require cities to digitize their UVARs. And also people who cross Europe, the inter-European vehicle operators, much less resistant to UVARs if they can get the information. Cities often also have their own digitization processes, and some cities are working on a digital mirror so that the digital data is equally valid to the piece of paper on the ordinance or the road sign. And geofencing and everything need digital data. So it's in your own best interest, cities. Please do so. Look for more information on these links. The sister project is UVAR Exchange. It has 3 aims. One is foreign vehicle enforcement. People like myself, like cities, we've been asking the EU to do this for about 20+ years, and only the EU can do this. So we're developing we've developed options or developing options and recommendations for the European Commission to enable the legislation. It can be technically done, it needs the law. Eva mentioned the EETS directive or the cross-border enforcement directive. Let's see what's used. Let's hope it's acted upon. The second one is recommendations for clear and better UVAR signage. The road signs you see, there's lots of plates from vehicle operators that I don't understand it, and even with your own national, what does this road sign mean? So guidance and demonstration, and this is incorporated into the ReVeAL guidance. And demonstrating cooperative ITS geofencing in navigation, geofencing, what's coming in the future. My personal view is that geofencing for changing to hybrid isn't really worthwhile doing for cities. Electric vehicles are coming too fast, brilliantly. And it's more in terms of updating the car manufacturing navigation systems, and that's the view of everybody I've talked to in this field on it. So I'm now presenting Cosimo's work, who's sitting in this room, who'll be talking later. So many thanks to Cosimo for this work he's doing on the UVAR Exchange. Circular road sign. People, if you do lots of text in your national language, it won't be understood. And if you're driving, you've got to take it in. So you've got the signs here. The red round sign is saying no vehicles entered. And the zone means that you don't have to repeat the road sign at every junction. And the second one is for a low emission zone, polluting vehicle. You can use either. And the zone sign means this rule is in place until you pass an outside of the road, across through exit sign. The pedestrian zone and the pedestrian priority zone. The UNEC regulations say that variation upon a theme and allow people to divert. So that's the main thing. And then there are more rules to an UVAR. So supplementary road signs, we're saying with cars and vehicles, the hours of the day during the week, and all day. If you've got a sticker, you can use the stickers, except authorized. Instead of having a long list of exemptions, just and authorized, because you'll know if you're authorized before you go in or not. And if you haven't got a sticker, the diesel and petrol. So all this is in the ReVeAL guidance, and it's on the UVAR Exchange website for any updates that we update after this. This is about VMS. You've got the slides. Here's the end of it. Here's the links. Please do go into the UVAR box if you're a city. Or if you don't complain when nobody knows about your UVAR because they haven't got it in their satellite navigation device. So, right, that's me.